Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Boardmasters with me, Chris Mullins, and once again Chris is here with me.
Hi there.
And following on from our disastrous pair of defeats, really, at the hands of Too Many Bones, although at least we did get to the Tyrants both time, I'm taking that as a win.
Yeah, we gave them a run for their money.
Yeah.
But
And we almost did beat Drellin, because we did only have to beat Drellin. I think we were worried about beating all the other baddies as well.
yeah, but it turns out that once you've you killed the main tyrant, then you won the game.
Okay, so we'll dive into the review. As ever, we'll have the same criteria that I use for all the reviews now. So we have the 5 categories of art style and theme, component quality, replayability, accessibility, and the overall gameplay. So we'll dive into art style and theme. Do you want to lead off on that one?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So the theme of this game is basically a dice-based RPG adventure game where you sort of build up your stats and abilities with the dice. It's loosely themed. When I first came across this game, I thought, it's very much like Final Fantasy in the same sort of style, where you're sort of building up your unique skills, so to speak. But yeah, I really like the theme to the game. I love the fantasy sort of theme anyway to most games. That's about all I've got to say about it, really.
I mean, in terms of the actual, gear locks against tyrants and things, it's probably one of the only games in my collection that I bought that wasn't largely motivated by the theme when I bought it. Like Dinosaur Island I bought because I wanted a dinosaur game, and Isle of Cats we bought because we love cats and things like that. Whereas this one is probably more than any other in my collection. Well, probably this and Brass Birmingham, actually, if I'm honest, where is a game that I bought purely based on its reputation, and also because I wanted to dodge the VAT increase at the beginning of the year. But in terms of then once I've got hold of it, the theme runs right through the game in terms of the amount of flavour text you've got with the encounters, even the loot, you get comical little quotes at the bottom, even the box has got quotes around it, and the play mats, the character sheets have all got little quotes and funny things that the Gearlocks are saying. There's such a sense of humour running through it that I didn't anticipate, to be honest. But having then gone through the Burn Cycle campaign with Chip Theory games, is very much the same sense of humour through there as well. So it definitely seems to be almost like a signature of Chip Theory games. In terms of the art style, the inside of the box art is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, something like that just being completely hidden away on the inside of a box cover is madness to me. I believe the adventure map has that artwork, but I don't have that yet. I will have that hopefully at the end of the year, because I'm getting that as part of the Burn Cycle campaign. And I think the actual designs and the artworks of the monsters and the Gearlocks themselves is really cool, because they're not sort of, you have the fantasy tropes, don't you? Just often when anything's set in the fantasy, it's Lord of the Rings. And this is, you've got orcs and goblins, which are quite similar, but bog frogs and these tyrants are very different, and I hate that goblin. But anyway, I think the art style, although there's not a lot of art in the game, the art that's there is very, very attractive and nicely done. And that probably leads us into components. And I mean, just wow for me on the components.
Yeah, for me as well.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, you pay the money for it. It's not a cheap game. But I knew Chip Theory games had a ridiculous reputation for their insanely high production values. But until you get your hands on it, you can't really comprehend just how fancy everything is.
No, it's certainly very upmarket.
Yeah.
Even the smallest detail is they put a lot of effort into it, and the component quality is, for me, it's probably the best. I mean, I've played 3 or 4 games with different games with Chris now. This is by far the best component quality of any game I've played with Chris.
I think this is the best game I've played with component quality, without doubt. I mean, some of the bigger ones, like the bigger Awaken Realms games I've got coming later in the year, like Ether Fields maybe might rival it. But, I mean, this is the standard, this is the standard version of Too Many Bones. You can't get a worse version than this. They don't do a cheap cardboard bits.
No.
And, I mean, I've seen comments where people say it's just a box full of die, but I mean, even the die, you've got dozens and dozens of custom die with all their different pictures and logos and stuff on it. The cards are PVC and completely waterproof.
Yeah.
You got the gorgeous neoprene. This was my first experience with neoprene, and it's probably not a good thing for me because it's made me want more and more. I just want to be wrapped in neoprene.
But I wonder if going forward more games are going to use this sort of neoprene matte sort of.
I think a lot of them do for like the deluxe ones. Destiny's is one that has, it's got really good quality dual layered cardboard player boards, but then it had deluxe neoprene ones as well, which are completely irrelevant given how good the cardboard ones are. But I still use the neoprene because I love it. But the only, I guess, negatives on it in terms of components for me are obviously the health chips are very different stock to the Monster Gearlock chips, although that is something that you can resolve with an upgrade. They do have premium health tokens, and like the Adventure Mat, that is something I will have as part of the Burn Cycle campaign. And also, the one thing that bugs me is this. They give the tracker to use on the Adventure Mat in the core box, but they don't give the Adventure Mat.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even known there was an Adventure Mat if this token wasn't in here and I had to Google to find out what on earth this little thing was. Although it's like the sort of thing Stace has in like jars all around the house, like little pebbles on display.
Yeah. Sea glass.
Yeah. Either put it in with the Adventure Mat or don't have it there.
Yeah. I mean, considering the component quality of the rest of the game is so gorgeous, and then you've got just a piece of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it looks nice and it feels nice, but I can't use it because I don't have the mat, and it's almost like the makers are mocking me by saying, here's your bit for your Adventure Mat, but you're not having it.
Yeah, they're paying for it.
Yeah, and it's cruel. It is cruel. And I think that covers the components. It's a massive plus for this game. But then we're probably going on to one of the biggest negatives, and that's probably accessibility. Because even putting aside the actual nature of the game, as we've said, it's a pricey game. You're looking at least £100, plus then probably shipping and VAT on top of that, which is why I had to get it before the new year. So that is a big hurdle. And, you know, to their credit, Chip Theory Games don't really do sales or offer it cheap in retail. So if they have a Kickstarter campaign, that's the cheapest way of getting it. And then they make sure the game holds the value after that.
Yeah.
But also, because it's not in mass retail, they're quite often out of stock on their website. Like, that's why I had to wait for the Burn Cycle campaign for the mat and the premium health tokens, because I couldn't buy them when I bought all the other expansions. So it can be quite hard to get your hands on the game, which is a big accessibility hurdle.
Yeah, for most people it would be.
Yeah, especially when you then add the cost on top of it. Other than that, setting it up and putting it away is not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
No, it's actually pretty. It doesn't take that long, especially if you've got a couple of people playing. One guy can sort all the chips out, the other guy can sort the cards out. Yeah, you'd probably set it up in 10 minutes with a couple of people.
I think the box is really well designed for that, so
yeah, it lends itself well.
You can quite easily have the 1 point baddie separate, then the 5, then the 20s, which is what I do, and then you just have to sort which ones you want for the tyrant, and then dish your dice trays out and draw some encounter cards to make the deck, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
Putting away takes a bit longer because it's all got to go in the right place, but I thought it was going to be a lot worse on that aspect. I was actually really pleasantly surprised how quick this is to get to the table and put away.
Yeah. Considering there's so many, components to the game as well, you'd think it would take longer, but
Yeah.
surprising.
So what thoughts do you have on the accessibility of the game itself?
I think similar to what you said. It's not. It's going to be at a price for most people, I would say. Also, as well, they need to. I think with the expansion packs, you've got a lot more options. With people be able to buy it more easy with the expansion packs.
Yeah, I think Undertow is a standalone one, and I think that's a bit cheaper. I don't think that's one of the ones I've got though, because I think that's a standalone one, whereas I got the stuff that integrates with this. But I think that probably is the one cheaper entry point, but I think that's still £70 to £80 as a game.
Yeah.
But in terms of like learning the game and the difficulty and things like that.
I think it's like in most games. I think it's better to play the game. You can watch videos, read rules, but with this, I think I find it better to play the game. I think it's one of those games that there's a lot going on. I mean, certainly when Chris and I have been playing the 2-player, you've sort of like got to keep your eyes everywhere, not only what yourself, your own characters, but also the baddies as well, and remembering to knock off the health, remembering to you've got a defense die there to knock that off rather than the health.
Even just remembering the enemies, like he's got signal, so he brings another one in.
Yeah.
And the amount of time, I think I've got it on video where I had baddies over here that I completely forgot to even bring in.
So yeah, I think, but I think it's one of those games that you can sort of like pick up fairly easily the more you play it.
Yeah, I think as long as one person knows the game, it's a lot easier to teach than. Like the first time me and Stacey sat down, neither of us knew what we were doing. We went through the tutorial in the rulebook, which didn't help at all. And that was awful. We left not knowing at all what we were doing. And Stacey hasn't ever played the game again. I think that scared her off a bit, even though she's been tempted since I've started doing it on the channel. But I think that did scare her off. And I wish I'd hammered it solo a bit before so I could teach her in the same way that I've taught you. But yeah, it's a very complicated game with a lot going on.
It is. It's a hard game.
Yeah.
Especially with the 2 players, that's the hardest sort of setting, even on the easiest
adventurer mode with the 2 extra health. But how anyone can get through this with Boomer on 3 HP and I have no idea.
I mean, I'm certainly looking forward to, like Chris said at the start of the video, when we can get more players in 3, 4, and then really going for it with all the gear locks, and I think then we've got a really good chance. But with 2, it's
because you can manage the board better.
Yeah.
With the higher gear locks. It's strange, really, to think that 2 players is harder than 1.
Yeah, that's a new concept to me. I don't think I've ever known a game where it's actually more difficult with 2 people.
But the way the baddie points escalate in terms of doubling it up. With 2 players, you're always fighting 2 against 4, whereas in 1 player, it's quite often 1 against 1, 1 against 2. You do get some battles that are 1 against 4, but usually by that time you've trained up a bit. With this one, it always feels like you're underpowered against what you're fighting against.
Yeah, it's very challenging.
But
even at the easiest level, it's challenging.
But and talking on the comment, I think I've got 16 plays of this now, and I would not be confident in saying that I've got through one of them without a mistake. I'll be interested to edit this one because I don't think we made too many.
No, I wasn't aware. I mean, but there was the big mistake we made the last week's playthrough.
Oh, we were terrible last week.
But it is very difficult.
It was on me, to be fair. I explained the baddie points and how the baddie queue is calculated, and then went 3 battles in a row, ignoring what I... Okay, sorry about that. My camera cut out halfway through, so we're going to have to record the second half again. So I think we've pretty much covered accessibility in that one. So we can dive straight into replayability now. And
Yeah, so replayability for the game. I think it's really good because obviously you've got the different amount of players you can introduce to the game, and unlike most games, the more the amount of players involved in the game does make a big difference. If you have 2 players or you have 4 players, it's a much more advantage to have the extra 2 players, and even like most games, if you've got 1 player, it's actually better than having 2 players. Well, it's certainly easier.
that's been my experience, definitely.
High replayability value because you have got so many. There's various tyrants you can go up against. You've got to pick between these 4 gear locks. So yeah, I'd say good replayability.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. I mean, yeah, there's 7 tyrants in the core box, 6 different baddie types that are always going to be mixed up depending which tyrant you are. So one game you'll have goblins, beasts and bogs, and other games you'll have orcs, trolls and scales. So from one game to the next, it'll be completely different on the enemies you face. There's the 4 gearlocks who all have very, very different builds and different skills and play completely differently. There's I think 48 encounters plus the 12 tyrant ones. But that's split between there's 6 special ones, there's the 12 solo and the 30 standard ones. So if you're playing solo a lot, you're probably going to have 7 to 10 encounter cards per game. When there's only 12 of those, after 2 or 3, you're going to recognise all of them, which obviously gets a bit repetitive. Whereas 30 encounter cards for the 2 to 4 players, again, you're still using the same number of them as the solo, so those 30 are going to last a lot longer than the 12. But yeah, depends how much enjoyment you get out of the flavour text and seeing a new encounter, or whether you just want to try a different approach, because you may take one decision and next time you take another decision. It will certainly be interesting. I really want to try it in 3 or 4 players where it's easier. Where some of these decisions, when we look at them, look completely impossible. I can't understand how we could even attempt like adding that one add a 20-point baddie to a top of baddie queue, which was already about 18 points, and you have to exhaust a number of die before you even start. I mean, at 2 players, that's just not possible. You can't do that,
and that's on the easiest sort of setting as well. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, we played every game on adventurer, so you get an extra 2 hit points and a training point to begin with, but I feel like I need an extra 5. 5 health points and 2 or 3 training points to even be competitive at 2 player. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned it in the accessibility. I've already played 15, 16 times. I don't find this boring at all. I still love it. I maybe wouldn't play it 2 player too much going forward, because it is you don't, because of the difficulty, you want to have that bit of reward after you've spent probably an hour and a half, 2 hours getting through a game. You want to be rewarded with winning, I guess. At least not being repeatedly hammered down as you lose encounter after encounter. And then muddle your way through to a tyrant battle where you then get demolished.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It can be a bit disheartening with that. Like you said, like Chris said, you've gone through it, or you basically got the last tyrant laughing in your face because you're so weak to face him anyway. And he's protected by a 20-point baddie.
If not more than one. And it's the inherent thing with board games where the replayability, if you don't like the game, you're not going to get any replayability out of it, because it feels the same every time. Although every game has a huge amount of variability, it still feels the same. It's like playing a Mario game or something, where every level is different and everything has different abilities and whatnot, but it's still the same game all the way through. But if you love the core game, you will play it to death.
Oh yeah, you definitely will. And I think because of the price point as well, you do your research into this before you bought it, and you.
Yeah, I mean, you never really know. Sometimes it just doesn't click with you, even though it's and vice versa. Sometimes things are not for you on paper, but they You enjoy them far more than you thought you would. And that probably leads us into the gameplay aspect.
Yeah, as Chris touched upon before, that it's a very challenging game, especially on a two-player. I can only sort of like give you a review on the two-player basis because that's the only game I've played it. It's even at the easiest level, it's challenging, and with the less players, it's even harder to sort of win. The gameplay itself it took me a bit of time to get used to, and even now I'm sort of having to be led by Chris to a certain degree, because there is a lot going on, and you sort of like got to keep track of everything very specifically, because if you don't do something, then it impacts the rest of the game, such as we had last week. So yeah, I really like the gameplay.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love decision making. I love deciding what stats I'm going to increase, what skills I'm going to take. Then you get in the battle, where am I going to start? Which baddie am I going to go for first? Which dice am I going to roll? Which choice on the encounter cards are we going to do? Do we want training points? Do we want loot?
Yeah, there's a lot of options.
It's an endless stream of decisions that feel like they matter.
Yeah.
And I know some people won't like the die aspect because it is very luck based. If you have a few bad rolls, then that will cost you a battle, even no matter how well prepared you are. And I know people will not like that. Some people won't, but for me, maybe because I've come from video gaming and playing Final Fantasy all my life, you will have attacks that miss on that randomly. I love XCOM, where you will be 2 foot from an alien with a gun on their forehead with a 98% chance of hitting them, and you'll miss. And it's the most frustrating thing in the world, but you get over it. You do it again. It's fine. It doesn't ruin my experience the way I know some people do. But that's something to bear in mind if it's a game you're looking at, in terms of whether it's going to be for you or not. But yeah, I absolutely adore the core game of this.
Yeah, me too. I like you just said, Final Fantasy. That's what's the first time I saw this game. That just reminded me of that straight away. The gaming, the RPG element, the gaming, the attacking element of it as well. Yeah.
It's interesting, really, because I've probably got 3 or 4 Final Fantasy games in my top 10 video games of all time, and I never made that connection until you said it in the review. Obviously it's a fantasy setting, but I never really... And I suppose even looking at the board, I never thought Final Fantasy Tactics until we started thinking about the review. But yeah, getting into that, what would your score be for the game?
So I absolutely love the game, and I'm going to give it a much deserved 10 out of 10. It's certainly the best game I've played with Chris, of the 3 or 4 we played together. Absolutely love it. You've got the beautiful components, probably the best components I've ever seen.
Without doubt.
In any game. The quality, okay, you do pay the price for it, but just the quality of all the materials is phenomenal. I love the gameplay, mechanics of the game is brilliant, as Chris highlighted before. The choices, although there is a lot of luck involved, you're making the choices towards that luck, if you like. I think.
And you're mitigating it, and as best you can.
So I love the game. I couldn't give it anything less than a 10. There's a couple of little faults which Chris has already talked about, but for me it's not enough to take it away from a 10 out of 10. Really looking forward to the 3 or 4 player games, which are going to hopefully fit in at some point. Big thumbs up for me.
First perfect score on the channel.
Yeah.
And I think it's always good to stress that a perfect score doesn't mean we think it's a perfect game.
No.
Because, my favourite video game for 20 years was Final Fantasy VIII, and with the draw system, that is one of the worst game mechanics I've ever played in a video game ever. But it doesn't stop me adoring the minute-to-minute gameplay all the time. I'm going to be slightly negative and give it a 9.5. Purely because I think the number of plays I've had compared to you is maybe those one or two little repetitive elements starting to get there for me. Like the first 3 encounter cards always being the same, the lack of flavor text after a 2-hour victorious campaign, just ending in a damp squib and having a complete anticlimax, which still baffles me with a game that's so heavy on flavor text and lore and funny, clever writing that then you win and it's literally just pin drop. That's it. It's like watching football with no fans, I guess. But not even the crowd noise. So those elements bring it down slightly for me. But it does have me exceptionally excited to play the expansions, because from what I understand, they do solve the issues that I have, because they have more special encounter cards for the beginning. They have flavor text for the end. And it also has me exceptionally excited for Burn Cycle when that comes as well, because I've gone all in on that. And I mean, just knowing that they will have the same chips for these little robots that also have bronze statues that magnetize on top of them and stuff is just going to be stunning when it hits the table. And anything by Chip Theory Games, I'm instantly interested in now. I won't back everything, because they do a lot more competitive games and things that aren't necessarily for me. Like Cloudspire is competitive, and I haven't really got into many competitive board games yet. But I adore this, and this will definitely be back on the channel in the new year once the expansions are there. The other gear locks when we can have 3 and 4 players. So this is not the end of Too Many Bones on the channel. We're just saying goodbye to it for a little while.
Yeah, can't wait to get back into it. We get more players, like Chris says. So.
Yeah, and so we'll leave it there. That is our review of Too Many Bones by Chip Theory Games. I will link to the website down below, because that is pretty much the only place you can buy it other than the second-hand market. So if you want to check it out, head on through to there. And we will see you next time, basically. So thank you for watching. Look after yourself, stay safe, and have a good one. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.